Welcome back to the channel, everybody. Today we're going to be focusing on financial statements. They're great for understanding the health of your business, but the only problem is that the numbers are only good through the date that these financial statements were created. They're basically a snapshot in the past. So what I'm going to show you how to do today in MySQL is to recreate the same analysis behind me. What it does is it looks at very common financial revenue time periods, like revenue over the last week, over the last month, over the last quarter, and over the last year, but on a rolling basis so that you can get updated numbers. This will help you understand how your business is trending real time rather than having to reference old financial documents. So let's head over to MySQL and I'll show you how to do this now. Okay, so in MySQL we're going to use a revenue table. It's called fact player revenue. These are just revenue transactions per customer. And all we are simply going to do is just sum revenue by date. Okay, so here's our query. This is an aggregation of revenue per day. Let's round that revenue number out to 2 decimal places, and that's it. Okay, that's better. Now here's what we need to do. So today's date is October 7th, 2024. Our data is good through the prior day, so October 6th, 2024. And what we want to do is we want to understand, hey, what's trailing weekly revenue, monthly, quarterly, and annual revenue? So the way we're going to do that is we're going to take this and turn it into a subselect. So this is revenue by day. And we're going to call this first table, and then we're actually going to copy this. Again, this is revenue by day, we're copying it, and call this second table. Great. So the only thing we need from the first table is actually the date. And then we're going to be using that date and referencing it through logic to sum revenue across a trailing week, trailing month, trailing quarter, and trailing year from our second table. So I'm just going to repeat that really quickly. Let's only take the date from our first table, or our first subselect. So we will get the purchase date, and then we're going to be doing a left join over to our second table, and we're going to do it on. So where the date from our second table is less than or equal to this date up here. And then of all of our trailing metrics, weekly, monthly, quarterly, annually is the widest one, so that's the one we're going to put in our join condition. So the date from our second table has to be less than or equal to the date in our first table, so this date up here, and we want the dates from the second table to go back 1 year, but not more than 1 year. So we will do the date from the second table has to be greater than more than a year ago. Okay, we're almost ready. Let's just check our work. So the date from our second table has to be less than or equal to this date, and our date from our second table has to be greater than a year ago. So going back a year for each of these dates. And again, that's putting a historical cap on our join that says, for each one of these dates, let's bring back revenue for the last year from table 2. Okay. So let's start aggregating our revenue. Okay, so this is for week, month, quarter, and year. So if the date from the second table is less than or equal to this date, but it's greater than 7 days ago, 30 days ago, 90 days ago, representing a quarter, and a year ago, then we're gonna sum revenue from our second table. It's going to be revenue else 0 end. Okay, let's look at this one last time. So our date from our second table is less than or equal to this date, but greater than a week ago, 30 days ago, 90 days ago, and 365 days ago relative to this date right here. And then we're going to be summing revenue from our second table. So let's name our columns. Revenue trailing week. Call this revenue trailing month. Revenue trailing quarter. Revenue trailing year. And then we need to add the group by. And then there's one last thing we need to do. Since we are summing revenue on a trailing basis, we're going back in time and saying, hey, based on this date, sum revenue both on this date and the last year, or the last month, or the last quarter. We have to make sure there's enough historical data in order to do it. So for example, if your business just launched 2 days ago, you're not going to be able to go back 365 days. So in order to check this and ensure that that historical data does exist, we're going to add some logic in our havings. We're going to say having a full 365 dates from table 2. This ensures we have enough historical data. Okay, so here is our finished query. Let's go ahead and run this. There we go. But one last sort of aesthetic thing we want to do is round out this revenue to the second decimal place. Alright, that's much better. Okay, so let's go ahead and move this over to Excel. Okay, here we are, so let's actually turn this into money. Okay. So here we go. Today I showed you a quick and painless way to get updated financial data out of MySQL. I think it's really great to know this method so that if you get any financial documents or financial statements that are only good through the date that the document was created, you can get updated numbers yourself in your respective SQL database. So please continue to like, subscribe, and share. Please let me know if there are any questions, and thank you so much for joining today's session. Bye-bye now.